Oh, you're talking about the little.
Yeah. I have a collection too. That's cute.
David, I only have one. It's David Rose from Schitt's Creek.
Oh, all right. So I have tons of Disney stuff, and that's cool.
I keep wanting to start a collection, and then my wife's like, yeah, no, you have
We
too
don't
many
have
other
place
things.
for that. Yeah.
Well, we are live. Welcome everybody to Women in DevOps. I'll give everyone a few minutes to get in and get signed up. We're also live streaming across multiple channels today, which is super exciting. And make sure you check out the polls on entry. And for those entering, a big, huge warm welcome to a Women in DevOps event today. Just going to give it a few more minutes for folks to get in, settle down, hopefully grab a glass of coffee, orange juice, or perhaps a glass of wine, depending on where you are in the world. And don't forget to participate in our polls too. Okay, so I'll get started, and we're going to start on this note from our lovely panelist Jeremy, that it's always after 12 noon somewhere in the world. So if you do have a glass of wine or you're joining us a beer today, cheers and welcome to Women in DevOps. Very excited about today's event for a few different reasons. This is our 33rd Women in DevOps event since we founded in April 2017. So very excited that we're hitting those early 30s, which is fantastic. We have an amazing lineup today. We have 2 exciting talks for you, hopefully some time at the end for a Q&A, but want to make sure we stick within our time frame. So a huge welcome today to our panelists. We have Patel from JFrog, who's going to be speaking with Anastasia from JFrog. We also have Jeremy from Circle CI. JFrog and Circle CI are sponsors from Women in DevOps, and we're incredibly lucky to have their partnership. As usual, we have Ari from JFrog joining us on the call. If you've joined us before, you know that every single month he comes up with a super exciting giveaway, and always some freebies. So I'll hand over to him in a moment. A quick description, and if you haven't been to Women in DevOps before, I won't bore you with our 3-year lowdown, but to give you an idea about what we do, what we stand for, what we advocate for, we are a group of advocates that advocate for the voices within the DevOps space. That started in April 2017 with Women in DevOps. We now underrepresent all minorities and underrepresented group within the tech space with a focus on cloud infrastructure. We're now also a group of over 8,000 community members globally. So although we have a US focused panel today, I can already see folks logging in from EMEA in the UK as well. So great to have a global audience as always. So without further pause, the man of the moment, our monthly treat from JFrog. I'll pass over to you, Ari.
Hey, Lauren, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hi, everybody. I am Ari Waller, and I have the privilege of being the Meetup event manager for JFrog. And I am so excited to be part of the Women in DevOps community. It's a real honor for us at JFrog, and we thank you for that. I'll share just a little bit about who we are. JFrog is the DevOps software company best known for Artifactory, which is considered by many as the gold standard for managing your artifacts and dependencies. I also know that some of you may have heard that JFrog and Docker announced a really cool partnership in the beginning of 2021. And we want Women in DevOps to be able to take advantage of this by taking the Docker Challenge. Now, besides the JFrog t-shirt that you're going to be awarded for completing the challenge, it's also a great way to try our free cloud version of the JFrog platform. And if you're working with Docker, as I know many of you are, JFrog's cloud subscription is capable of functioning as a pull-through cache for Docker Hub. And because of our partnership that I just mentioned, you'll be exempt from their rate limits on pulls from free or anonymous accounts. So hopefully that could prove valuable in a lot of different ways for you. Now, how do you take this challenge? Well, that comes to the giveaway we're going to do this month. I hope other people are as excited about as I am about this one. But tonight, JFrog has a raffle only for meetup attendees and those watching live right now. And we'll be giving you a chance to win a Lego Porsche 911. You can enter with the QR code. Now, by the way, this is a 1448. It's not a little dinky Matchbox Maxwell. This is going to take you some time. This is going to take some investment. You're going to want to put this on your fireplace. It's going to be a source of pride for you to have. So it's 1,448 pieces, and it's really, really, really awesome. It's not one of the ones I had built in the back. So whoever wins it gets to really needs to post some pictures. But what you'll be able to do is if you use the QR code that you see or the bit.ly link that I am going to drop in the chat in just a few moments, you'll be able to enter throughout the duration of the webinar today, as well as also during the networking breakout session. So at that point, we close it up. And one of the great things you can do also when you get to that forum is you can opt in to take the Docker challenge. So and get that t-shirt when you do it. So that's something we would love to be able to supply for you. A winner is going to be selected within 2 business days. We have a compliance team, and as a result of that, we can announce the winner once they officially accept the prize. So once they do, we're going to share that with the entire Women in DevOps community. So that is that's pretty much what I have, except for one more small thing. Lauren, not to put you on the spot today, but you know, one of the things I've noticed just from working with you for almost 2 years now is you know, you're always giving. You know, you give so much to the community. You were a major part, the major founder for Women in DevOps, and I know you have an amazing team that works with you, and I know you give credit to them. But just for you, I really wanted to provide you a something special, and I thought about this the other day. You know. We have because you know I like Legos, and I wanted to make sure that you got the Lego Pride set that was just given out. We gave it as a prize a couple of months ago, but you know, you can't win. I mean, this is yours. You have to let everyone else win. But I'm going to send one out to you. It's going to be yours to display as well. I have it on my fireplace downstairs. It's really, really awesome, and I would love for you to have one as well. But most importantly, thank you for all that you do, and of course, your amazing team. Really means a lot to us at JFrog to be part of this.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And Women in DevOps has only been able to create this scale and the impact it has because of amazing allies like yourself. And if you've been to a Women in DevOps event before, you know that our community makeup is so diverse, from women for community members, part of the LGBTQ+ community. We're looking at ethnic minorities, the BAME communities, and some amazing allies like yourself, Ari, and also Jeremy, who's joined us today. We couldn't do it without your support and advocacy. So thank you so, so much. So I'll introduce our speakers for today. We have 2 really exciting talks. So we have one talk from Jeremy at Circle CI, and he's going to talk through something he's very passionate about, which is creating transparency within the DevOps space. He's going to talk through some really cool kind of key concepts, which is going to lead us up to our amazing duo from JFrog today. We're going to talk about their DevOps-ing journey with automation from Patel and Anastasia. So 2 20-minute talks, so you know, attention spans. We won't have a break in between as it's quite a short event today. But as I mentioned at the start, hopefully your coffee or your orange juice or your wine and beer ready. So Jeremy, I'll hand over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself and get started?
Sure. Yeah, I'll get started, and then as a part of all of that, I'll end up introducing myself as part of that. So, yeah, I'm just so thankful to be here. I appreciate again just what Lauren and the team does with women in DevOps, and just the mission they're continuing to advance, and just glad to be here, glad to be able to support that. So going to talk today about deploy, release, CI/CD, oh my, or slicing and dicing DevOps word salads. So, well, it seems that, every week a new term kind of tends to appear that describes kind of DevOps tools, segments, ideas, the different practices, et cetera. Are they all really new, or is it just another way of painting it? You have CI/CD and progressive delivery and AI ops and Git Ops and Devsecops and tree ops. Okay, so tree ops isn't real, but who knows? Maybe it will be next week. And kind of as a side note, as I was kind of creating this talk recently, I literally registered devtreeops.com for this very talk. I have over 20 domains that are doing nothing. Hi, I'm Jeremy Meese. I have a problem. As I just said, my name is Jeremy Meese. I'm the director of DevRel and community at Circle CI. You can find me on the Twitters at I am Jerdog. I've also started using the new Polywork system. So you can find me at timeline.jerdog.me. And again, just happy to be here and love to be able to support women in DevOps. So with all the terms that are out there, are they all really the same, or are they just kind of reimagining, like I said, last week's buzzwords? Sometimes it feels like companies, they kind of like to chop it all up, and all those buzzwords kind of into that, throw them all together, and then voila, they have a new DevOps salad that's out there. So I want to kind of take a step back, and as we kind of think about the DevOps lifecycle, there's the hope and then there's the reality. John Allspaw called it work as imagined versus work as done. And I think this image here really illustrates it. There's the way we want to do deployments and the way we want to kind of do our software development life cycles in DevOps. But then the reality tends to be all of this. I've been in a number of these. Sleep is mentioned here. I don't know that I ever got much sleep when I was doing development, which is why I think I ultimately stepped out of it. But what I want to do here is kind of start with some of the more recent kind of trendy terms, ideas, and buzzwords, and then kind of finish with some more foundational elements for DevOps. All right, so we'll start with AI ops and just jump right in there. Gartner kind of coined the term AI ops, which is short for artificial intelligence for IT operations. And they define it as AI ops combines big data and machine learning to automate IT operations processes, including event correlation, anomaly detection, and causality determination. All of that together. Another way to put this was by the Wikipedia entry for AI ops that says it's an industry category for machine learning analytics technology that enhances IT operations analytics. These tasks that are kind of part of AI ops would include things like automation, performance monitoring, event correlation, among others. And the AI ops platform has two main aspects. There's machine learning, and then there's big data. And in order to collect data from the big data platform for the purposes of observing it and then engaging with it, you have to kind of shift away from segregated IT data towards more of a holistic machine learning analytic strategy. The goal then would be to kind of reduce would be to receive continuous insight, so you can continuously kind of fix and improve via automation, which is where that kind of AI piece comes in. So in its simplest form, I like to say in its simplest form with this graphic, which is anything but simple, but in its simplest form, an AI ops platform helps aggregate and make sense of disparate data sources. And then kind of helps you identify the link in relationships, kind of interrelationships between the different silos that are there, and then help predict the certain events, prescribe solutions, and then act based on real-time data streams. All right, so next, Git Ops. Git Ops is relatively new. There's not even a Wikipedia page for it. It just started appearing in the last few years and is even newer than AI Ops. And then I also, I noticed when I was searching for this on Wikipedia, not only is there not even a page for it, there's not even a page for, it says, did you mean Git within a space between it, Git Ops? So I thought, I'll click on that. There's not even a page for that. So we're talking about a relatively new term, and it's probably a very serious oversight by the DevOps word salad gods that there's not even a Wikipedia entry for it. So that may be rectified soon, but that also may be telling about it as a actual concept. So Weaveworks describes Git Ops as a way to do Kubernetes cluster management and application delivery. It attempts to kind of take existing continuous delivery and infrastructure as code principles, which are not tool specific, and then repackage those down into tool specific activities. So they kind of do it as the entire system ends up being described declaratively. The canonical system state is versioned in Git, and then approved changes can be automatically applied, and then software agents ensure correctness and alert on divergence. And as I've seen it over the last few years, this term never ceases to carry its own weight and controversy on DevOps Twitter. Every so often, you'll see somebody will post on, why they love Git Ops, and you'll see, someone come up and post some long thread about how Git Ops is not really a thing, and then they go back and forth, and then they make up, and everything's great, and then the next month it spins back up. So, kind of like you ask somebody what the definition of DevOps is, and you'll get a long thread. So if you ever want to start a Twitter war, just giving you some ammunition. So Devsecops. Devsecops is kind of defined. Phil Richards, in a post on Threat Post, described DevSecOps like this. He described it as DevSecOps puts security at the forefront of the development process as a whole, ensuring that good cyber hygiene remains top of mind for developers and operators from start to finish. And it's a definite shift in mindset, which encourages organizations to find the best possible approach to developing secure code and applications. Wikipedia describes DevSecOps as an augmentation of DevOps to allow for security practices to be integrated into the DevOps approach. Giving each delivery team the ability to identify and include the correct security controls into their DevOps practices is extremely important, and helps the developers really start to own security as part of their development. A common phrase now is shifting security left, which is an approach to software security, placing that importance on implementing security practices and testing earlier in the development lifecycle. So instead of having it be something that's either responsibility of ops or sticking right there in the middle, it's this idea that it should be part of the planning, the coding, the building, the testing. Everything should be a part of it from the very beginning. There are many tools out there which do help give developers those resources and the power to implement security as an important part of that life cycle, and not just as an afterthought. Progressive delivery. This is another new term probably in the last couple years, which the way things go, I don't know that we can really say it's a new term anymore if it's been a couple years, but it was a term that was coined by James Governor of RedMonk. He heard a presentation from somebody at Microsoft about progressive experimentation and about their model there at Microsoft for feature rollouts. And he wanted to kind of capture a wide range of new software development practices that went beyond just continuous integration and continuous deployment. And so he coined the phrase this way: as progressive delivery is continuous delivery with fine-grained control over the blast radius. Adam Zimmern, who was formerly the VP of product at LaunchDarkly, realized that feature management would be a key enabler of the new kind of progressive delivery model, which, you know, is the model defined by dark launches, feature flagging, testing in production, canary launches, blue-green deployments, A/B testing, and so on, to make sure that everything's ready before deploying to the, you know, making your blast radius ultimately bigger as you go, so that you test and you're not as impacting as impactful as you could, negatively as you could be from the beginning. So there are kind of two tenets which make up this methodology, which is release progression. This refers to adjusting the number of users exposed to and impacted by new features at a pace that's appropriate to your business. So you can perform release progressions in a variety of ways, like you know, you have targeted rollouts. I mentioned canary launches, ring deployments, percentage rollouts, so on. Different ways of getting releases out. And you can also kind of think of release progression as a progressive deployment or a progressive release. It's the same thing. The second piece of this is progressive delegation. So this refers to progressively delegating the control of a feature to the owner who is most closely responsible for that outcome. A simple way to think about this is initially engineers, they control a feature. They're the ones developing it. And that makes sense. They're responsible for building it, testing it, and so on. But once that feature has been tested, it makes more sense for a product manager, for example, to control that process of launching the feature, letting the engineers get back to engineering. And they can get back to doing what, you know, goes back to that development lifecycle. Let them get back to the development. Let the, you know, product managers, product owners, let them start to do the launching. And then, you know, can get that feedback quickly back into the pipeline, so developers can continue to make changes. All right, so CI/CD. CI/CD refers to continuous integration and continuous deployment. You'll hear some that will say like continuous delivery as being that D piece, and that probably brings a lot of conversation around that. Continuous delivery itself is part of the overarching principle around DevOps. Continuous deployment is what the CD is for, you know, when you talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment together. So I'm going to separate these terms a little bit. Continuous integration is a practice that encourages developers to integrate their code into a main branch of a shared repo early and often. Instead of building out features in isolation and integrating them at the end of that development cycle, code is integrated with the shared repository by each developer multiple times throughout the day. Continuous integration is a key step to digital transformation. So kind of the what of it, every developer is committing daily to a shared mainline. Every commit triggers an automated build and test. And if build and test fails, it's repaired quickly, hopefully within minutes, and that process continues until the builds and tests are complete and goes on. Then it moves on to the deploy piece. And one of the big why, you know, a couple of the answers for the big question of why you would want continuous integration is it does improve your team efficiency, productivity, and even their happiness. Finding problems, you can solve them quickly. You can also release higher quality, more stable products with continuous integration. Continuous deployment is the practice of ensuring that software is always ready to be deployed. Part of that is testing every change that you've made. In addition, you've also made the effort to kind of package up the actual artifacts that are going to be deployed. So perhaps you've already deployed those artifacts to a staging environment. Continuous deployment requires continuous integration in order for this to work. It relies on the same underlying principles of cutting the work into smaller increments. All right, so the question then becomes, are you releasing or are you deploying? Is it a release or is it a deployment? Over the years, I've noticed that a lot of IT professionals and vendors, they kind of confuse the words deploy and release. And there is actually a big difference. And a lot of IT professionals are not kind of aware of this. So I'm going to break down how release and deploy are independent and crucial steps in your shipping process. right, so a deploy or deployment includes all of the technical activities that are needed to make a software system or feature available for use. So if you think of a Docker container running in a pod on the Kubernetes cluster, the piece of software passed all the tests in your CI/CD pipeline, is ready to be, receive traffic from your production users, but it's not actually receiving any of that yet. This part of the process is just to make sure the new version is healthy and running smoothly. It takes care of all the technical checks and balances without any other risk incurred by actually serving actual production traffic. You can conclude that kind of deploying a piece of software is a mundane and risk-free activity when you do it in this way. It's part of the reason for progressive delivery is that piece of little bits at a time. Deployments related to the overall continuous delivery process, but tends to be more automated, thus getting them ready to be released. Now, the release process. Release comes after a deployment and includes all of the activities that are needed to move part of or all of that production traffic to the new version. So all of the risks and things that could go wrong, like downtime, lost revenue, and ultimately a bad customer experience, are related to the release and not deploy to production. Releasing software is risky, and that should be done in a slow, very controlled fashion. The release cycle is that overall process of deploying software to an environment, and then ensuring all the deployments in a release are functioning and performing as expected. So you could view release processes and management as related to the continuous delivery concept, but themselves are individual processes. This would be where practices like progressive delivery or release orchestration comes in, assigning version tags so that releases go, and rolling out that way, and other related activities. So thank you. That's kind of the end here of the quick rundown. Again, you can find me on Twitter. I am Jerdog. I've also written a few articles on dev.to. Need to go back to writing, but you can also find me on LinkedIn and then Timeline. And that is, that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeremy. Oh, there I am. Thank you so much. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions? We can use the Q&A box if you have any specific questions on Jeremy's talk. Unfortunately, he won't be joining the networking today, but as he just pointed out, go make sure you follow him in all the socials. And he even dyed his hair especially in women in DevOps colours. So very committed to the community.
Just for this. Next time I'm on, it'll probably be a different color. We'll just keep that going.
Excellent. Any final questions? Okay, perfect.
I want to say James mentioned something that, he said in his last company, they use Git Ops, and then also in the current, and that it relies on a mature CI/CD before you can leverage Git Ops. Absolutely agree. That's important and extremely essential in order to use, if you're going to go down the principles of Git Ops, CI/CD plays a very, very important piece of that.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. We'll move on to our second. Oh, wait, actually, we have one question. A question here. How related are ML ops and DevOps? I can just share this with you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I would say is ML ops is it's a function of DevOps. It's using machine learning. It is different from AI ops, but it's using machine learning. You'd see systems like I would say you could probably say Honeycomb and some of those others are using a lot of ML ops to help you identify where things are going to go wrong. So it's a way of working that fits within DevOps as the overall arching principle.
Perfect.
Thanks for the question.
Excellent. Well, look, I will thank you so much for your time, Jeremy. I really enjoyed that. I was actually taking some notes myself. So I will now pass the stage over to the lovely Batal and Anastasia at JFrog, who are going to talk to you all a little bit more about the DevOps-ing journey. Over to you.
Cool. Thank you very, very much. This is so cool to show my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to be here today. And let's talk a bit about our DevOps-ing journey.
Hi there. We hear a lot about DevOps, about implementing DevOps in your organization. We tend to think that DevOps is all about tools. Hey, let's bring Kubernetes, let's work with specific cloud and so on. In our DevOps-ing journey at JFrog, we understood that DevOps is more than just tools and working environments. It's about process, tools, and people.
Processes to deliver stuff faster, getting it liquid, and so on. You know, the automation need to reduce manual tasks, like Jeremy said, and processes. So every step from development to release should be automated as much as possible. Tools for CI/CD, like specific cloud provider, distribution, installation, monitoring, and deployment tools. And of course, as Anastasia said, it's about people, right? Implementing DevOps is changing the mindset of people.
So the combination of people, process, and technology enables continuous delivery of value to you and your users or customers.
We would like to take you through our DevOps journey at JFrog, moving to Kubernetes orchestration to scale and increase our productivity.
So just like in other organizations, at JFrog, we need to release fast, to scale,
Fast,
to maintain,
fast, of course,
support customer needs and the business.
fast, and have a fast, smart self-service, right?
Yes, and also we would like to integrate JFrog application fast between each other.
So in other words, we would like to release fast or die.
Right.
So our first question for today is, do you like Kubernetes? Please let us know what do you think about it on the chat. I'll just open the chat really quick. Okay, cool. And let's see, what do you think? Who like Kubernetes? Oh, that's cool. I want to see more answers. Let's give you another 20 seconds. So where's all my girls? 2. Okay, so we have some people that know Kubernetes, but it's hard. That's totally fine.
We can define that Kubernetes is just challenging. It's not hard. Maybe it's just for the challenging process.
Yeah, and some people even love it. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, so the next question is, do you think you know how to work with Kubernetes? This is the answers. Please choose your best answer which is with you. Wow. Actually, we have here some knowledge, but we also have here people that really new in Kubernetes, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so let's talk a bit about Kubernetes. Let's see how it's working.
Yeah, great. Here we go.
Cool. So first of all, again, thank you very much for being here. My name is Batel Zora, and I'm a developer advocate in JFrog. Before that, I was an embedded engineer and a web developer and worked on the support team in JFrog and HTS. As you can see in the picture, I have an amazing doggy. Yeah, I love dogs. I have 2 right now. Just another beautiful girl named Sol. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm pretty available and I really, really love to help. And Anastasia, back to you.
Yeah,
Tell us
thank
a bit
you.
about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Anastasia. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for joining us. I've been working at JFrog for the last 5 years as a DevOps engineer and challenging myself each and every day by making our life easier with automation, infrastructure adaptations, and more and more and more. So yeah, sure. Also from my side, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and here we go to the journey.
Awesome. So let's start. So let's start from the beginning. We deployed the JFrog application, right? As you can see here, the JFrog application is prepared to be distributed in various deployment package types, including Helm, RPM, Debian, Docker, and much more.
Each of these application versions need to be built and tested and include all the distribution package dependencies. Today we have 9 different distributions, and there are more to come. We know that the release cycle will be much more challenging.
So to adopt a more proactive approach to delivering a verified and trusted code, and they enhance the process by adding more functionality.
So we all understand that we must use automation as much as possible, right? Okay, so why we want to use automation? Maybe it's obvious, but we all know this, and it's important to mention that humans make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. Rather than spending time manually triggering some semi-automated tasks to get what's actually needed, we instead to focus on enhancing the application protection layers, adapting the different resources like the CPU, the memory, per application or distribution type. We improving our security program depends on our organization or our needs, and configuring services for customers' needs, and it's easy to support adding new application and services. And I totally agree with Anastasia. We are always making mistakes, right? Just a bad day or something like that. So why use Kubernetes?
Yeah, actually using Kubernetes and using actually automation at all, we increased both the scale and the effectiveness of our deployment operations.
So here we get into microservices. It enables us to focus more on the details of the code rather than the infrastructure where the code runs on. Kubernetes is about 7 years old, and it became to be one of the most loved platforms and the de facto standard for orchestrating container workloads.
So in order to move running microservices and using Kubernetes cluster, at JFrog, we had to prepare some infrastructure changes and make sure that we knew what we are getting into. Let's observe in a brief a high-level 4 to-dos for the application changes that needed to be get done before moving to Kubernetes. It's application security, stateful set application versus stateless, graceful shutdown, and infrastructure as code. Let's observe that.
Right. So let's start with application security. First, Kubernetes cluster behaves as a proactive wrapper by isolating the application from other containers and the host computer system. It's running the application as a dedicated user without privileges or permissions. It scans your container for vulnerabilities, protecting your API that's connected to the system, network, application, and devices, and stores sensitive information in secrets, provides sensitive environment variable from secrets, and more.
The second item is stateful set application versus stateless. Before start running application in production on Kubernetes cluster, it's important to understand that the application and what is his architecture.
So the best practices for stateless application is do not rely on local storage. Storage could change in different environment and can differently with different application. Do not rely on local storage or do not store state information in case your application can disappear at any time or be restarted. We would like to avoid specific server information, right? We want to make sure that we always can create it again and again without any issues that related to the storage. Also, Docker is very lightweight, so we would like to use environment variable or system properties to make sure that the application can always recover. And replicas. Replicas, when we have several replicas we are running at the same time, the replication needs to be covered and sync each one between all the replicas every time.
So if we can summarize in the context of a Kubernetes cluster, we can talk about a CAP theorem. Consistency means that every read gets the most recent write. It means that if write request was done on pod A, so pod B must show the latest data or give you an error message. Availability. The application must function as close to perfection as possible. And the last one, we are talking about the partition tolerance. It's about the ability to survive the failure of not running the application.
So the third item is Graceful Shutdown. Start watching for signals on the application interruption like kill signal, keyboard interruption, and others. Also, we want to ensure that once the application will be redeployed, restarted, or crashing, the runtime process will be graceful shutdown and the information will not be lost. We need to set up a time for the task to be complete. It's important to track the application, right? We want to try to understand how long it will take to run, how long it will take to just shut down and so on. So we would like to add more output for the application to be able to debug it whenever it's needed.
The last but not least is infrastructure as code. Infrastructure as code is a key and foundation for DevOps practices, such as version control, code review, pull requests, continuous integration, continuous deployment, as before Jeremy mentioned in previous talk. Provisioning of the new infrastructure can take a long time. For example, network layout, servers, databases creation, security rules. This is done carefully, but mistakes happen, and configuration drifts happen occasionally. Moreover, there can be uniformity between regions and cloud providers. For example, provisioning time of new region in the past can be reduced from 3 weeks manually task to 30 minutes automation provisioning process, and even can be reduced to more, to less minutes.
Yeah, so when preparing to scale, it must come together with unified configuration management to act like a source of truth. It means that no manual changes can be done, but only from configuration management tool. Any change have to be documented and committed, basically. And when we want to make sure that the team is aware for this process, and it's super important to document it better, understand the track and the changes. So Git allows us changing and versioning infrastructure safely and efficiently.
Great. So master. When the code reaches master, it means that it's a production ready. The version released from master should be tested and promoted for production rollout, like release. Immutable infrastructure avoids configuration drift. The code is compared to the current state of the environment. When plan is applied, resources are added or removed.
So we tend to think that the journey to microservices often comes with containerization, but these paths are not necessarily bound to each other.
We usually want to benefit from the Docker toolset. That's why Docker will trigger the usage of microservices. Some organizations implement microservices without or with Docker, and some run monolith applications inside Docker.
Every organization is different, so no one can tell you that you are doing it wrong or you are good. You know, every organization is a bit different.
This is always depends on your organization needs and only on that.
So the larger the application scale, the more system administration and control is needed. Even when we started to use managed cluster, we still need to change and adapt the cluster to our organization policy and needs. We have some example here to share it with you from our base experience.
Yeah, so I will start with Nginx Ingress controller. We recommend to apply the presentation tier in multi-tier architecture for separation between the public endpoint to the application. It means that the application will be running behind the web server or load balancer that can be the first line of defense for attacks and will protect, prevent, and offload the work from the applications. The access to the application will be with TLS configured. Moreover, unencrypted communication like plain text is not recommended at all.
Second example is DNS Server. By default, the cluster comes with kubedns already deployed, and you might want to migrating it to core DNS. And here are several reasons why. First of all, core DNS is multi-threaded, is written in Go, and instead of single-threaded kubedns, which is written in C. And the second reason is that CPU and memory consumption, as the number of services and endpoints scale up, so the memory requirements for each DNS port. At the default setting, core DNS should be expected to use less memory than kubedns, and it's due to the overhead of the 3 containers used by kubedns against only 1 container in core DNS.
Okay, so the next item is plugins. We recommend to start using plugins like, for example, Calico for network policies. On Azure Cloud, it's enabled by default when you create a managed cluster on AKS. The motivation is to protect and isolate the applications from other services and third parties running in the same cluster. Moreover, it can be used inside the namespace to have a control and isolation of particular pod or service.
Now we also have logging and monitoring, and you can decide if you want to manage the stack by yourself, or you're installing ELK or Prometheus, or you can use Elastic Cloud service and ship the pods STD out to the system or further analyzing and monitoring.
Okay, NFS provisioner. What we can say about NFS provisioner? So actually, sometimes we might want to use an NFS storage, yeah? For some of our applications for sharing common data or keep the information even after the pod is restarted or redeployed. Each cloud provider offers an out-of-free dynamic provisioner for Kubernetes, like on Amazon, it's EFS provisioner, or on Google GCP, it's NFS client provisioner, while on Azure Cloud, this layer is unnecessary since you can use storage class directly to connect to your Azure files.
But you can always add more services to be deployed on your cluster. It's just some recommendation, but as we said, any organization works a bit different.
Exactly. Also, we progressed with security enhancement on our Kubernetes cluster. And part of the journey, we can recommend the following. First of all, we always recommend to encrypt the connection to your database with TLS.
Also, always we would like to use a private network to run our Kubernetes cluster nodes for a better protected cluster. Any external access can be done via managed NAT and port forwarding where it's needed. And we can talk about the security without encryption. While we're working on a specific cloud provider, you can use the cloud provider services like KMS to encrypt the sensitive data.
In addition, you might want to use a private Docker registry like Artifactory or many others, which is trusted source for Docker images pulled as part of deployment process in Kubernetes cluster. Moreover, you must keep your Kubernetes cluster version updated to get the new features support as well as security vulnerabilities improvements.
So run different services on dedicated node pools to protect sharing the container runtime with other microservices. So for example, we would run our front-end services on a different node pool to isolate it from malicious application that could run on other nodes. And that will protect our core services to be damaged.
Now, when our cluster is ready, we can step in with our application deployment.
So whenever we trust the code, we say iron code or Barzel code in Hebrew. For that, we must to have some business deployment service. We can call it self-service that running business logic of deployment of for installation and upgrades.
It means that it doesn't matter in which state the application, service, or Helm release is running, the redeploy will always bring the application or service to the desired state from perspective of application version, Helm chart version, environment configuration setup. For example, development, staging, and production might have a different configuration setup on environment, the code with business logic support, and the ability to have a feature flags to be enabled or disabled on demand, and much more, of course.
So how we can get the process faster without releasing or rolling any new version to production? What if need to redeploy some server or application with non-default configuration? How we can ensure that a configuration is not deleted or overridden without approval by mistake, or just by mistake? Sorry.
Exactly. Good questions, and as usually, rollout requires the testing cycle and staging environment, so the deployment process can rely on external configuration that is changing frequently. This configuration can be loaded, check out it, and be used as part of the runtime deployment process.
So configuration as code. Having the deployment process as iron code, we can redeploy the application with using the new configuration loaded from external source without changing the automation code.
So from this example you see above, we recommend, you can see that the application resources initialization inside the Helm values YAML file, that the file doesn't change, but what is changed, since it's get the actual resources from the external source managed in Git and changed frequently. That's why it's very important to get this inside the deployment process. So the business doesn't change, but the values are changing.
Here you can see another example of Java options configuration that can be changed per application needs. So the Helm values.yaml can stay persistent using for loop function for each Java option.
Great. What it gives us, why to use that? It gives us the flexibility, the liquid process of automation and delivery, continuous updates, not releasing a new version because of configuration changes, and it gives us the confidence in the process.
Which is super important. Also, we would like to have the ability to enable a specific feature for some customers or a specific region, or just change the default and allow the feature to all of the customers. In order to enable it automatically, we will need to add some code changes that will run silently until the feature is enabled. It will be required redeploy those will provide a fully initial startup of our Barzo code.
Great. So we can summarize that redeploy will always be source of truth in all cases of broken configuration, of missing objects, Kubernetes objects, or Helm release, other miscommunications between the applications running inside the cluster, inside the namespace, connection between the application services, application version updates or deployment change, delivery, and much more, of course.
So we hope you enjoyed the session.
Feel free to raise any questions. We're here for you. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, both. That was brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I learned a ton personally. I was taking lots of notes. So thank you so much for a really great presentation, and yeah, very strongly communicated. So yeah, we're coming to the end of the talk. Please make sure you follow both Patel and Anastasia on their socials. And let's use the Q&A box again, or the chat box. For anyone that might have any questions, we do have about 5 minutes left, just to have any answers or any questions. I also, if Lucy, if you could publish the poll, I would love to pick both Anastasia's and Batel's brains around some of the poll results, if possible. Perfect. So as you logged in this morning or this afternoon or this evening, depending where you are, we asked, do you feel that there's been a cultural shift in the last year when addressing diversity in DevOps? And 89% of you said yes, which is fantastic, and it's also something that I've personally seen. So for context, I also am a recruiter. I've been recruiting the DevOps space for 7.5 years, and within the last year I have seen a huge shift towards this. And my personal opinion is I do think the pandemic has actually played like a really positive part in this, with opening the world up to remote, which means that, you know, working parents and folks from, you know, different backgrounds who couldn't necessarily, you know, afford to uproot their lives at the San Francisco Bay Area, for example, have the opportunity now to work for different companies in different roles, you know, remote learning, etc. But I'd love to ask you both if you've personally seen this shift. If you have, you know, what do you think attributes to that? And if you haven't, what can we do to get there?
All right, so Anastasia, want to be the first to answer, or?
After you.
Wow, okay, cool. So first of all, yeah, I definitely agree that with all this pandemic, we try to change a bit the culture, and we try to move everything and find all the security issues at the beginning, like we are trying to achieve whenever we have the shift left culture.
Okay, so I would like to add also that I really exciting to see the change, the transformation change inside the whole parts of our life, and not only in the work, in children studying, all remotely, and even cooking, sport, much more areas. I see this transformation, and each and any company today comes to be a technical and must have the DevOps processes be implementing and integrating inside even it works on my computer, it doesn't work anymore, because it's not only my computer today, it's all the world. And after the code is being on my computer, after several minutes it can be released to the master, and master is almost production ready release. So each process is very important and become to be actually a de facto a must have for each organization.
Excellent. Now we literally have 2 minutes left, so I'll pick your brain super quickly. But when interviewing for roles recently, if you have been interviewing, hopefully not, I'm sure you're enjoying it at JFrog, but if you have been interviewing or interviewing in the past, or perhaps you've been interviewing for your teams, and there's been a lot of growth at JFrog recently, have you felt like it's been an inclusive process? And if it hasn't, what can we be doing as peers, as hiring managers, or for folks who are currently interviewing to really recognize what we can be doing to make it more of an inclusive process?
So the question, I just want to understand, the question is if in DevOps area, the process of recruitment is different than in other areas? I think it's not a matter of a tool or knowing some tool or be familiar with some tool or some cloud provider or some code, basics. It's more over than that. It's more about the integration and the process, the thinking about the right way to do that, and to invent all the time, invent the process. There is never something it's already existing. You always need to invent the process and to apply it to the organization needs.
Yes, I'm definitely agree with Anastasia. I think it's not something specific, like talking about a process and what will be the best way to find the solution. Even if it's hard, there is so many ways to get the exact same results or with different tools. So of course, it's important to know different tools and understand how Kubernetes works, for example, but there is so many things that should be combined together for this process that it's important, but it's not only that.
Excellent. And that wraps us on the hour exactly, which never happens here at Women in DevOps. So
Oh,
I want to thank you both again. Thank you so much for today's presentation. It was super insightful. And thank you for everyone who's attended live, for everyone who's watching us on YouTube or being streamed live. You know, we're so lucky to have you as part of the Women in DevOps community, and we hope to see you again engaged on either our online or soon to be offline events. So keep your eyes peeled across London, the US, and Europe for some in-person events coming to a city near you very soon. And please do join us for the networking straight after. The link's in the chat box, so I'll wait a couple of minutes so you all have a chance to get the link, and I'll meet you in the networking session. If I don't see you there, thank you again for joining, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourself and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.